The last time Newcastle conceded a goal in the Premier League was the 6th of November last year. That's a long time ago. They have conceded 11 goals this season. That's better than any other team in the league, including Arsenal, who conceded 16. They have kept 12 clean sheets, which is better than any other team in the entire league. But how are they doing it? Why is Newcastle's defence so good? Well, there's a few things to look at, starting with the individuals in this defence here and what they do. So, in Dan Burn and Sven Botman, what you have are two very committed players, but also two very tall players. This guy's 6'7", this guy's 6'5". So when you combine them, they become the tallest possible centre-back partnership you could get in the league. Quite useful. And when you consider that although Burn plays at left-back, actually when they defend, they've got him in the back line to help defend against set pieces. Very, very useful having tall people in that. Then you've got Fabian Schär, who is about 6'2", doesn't really matter, tall, good player, a really good partnership with Sven Botman. So these two are the centre-back pairing, and what you get is that when, say, you've got a striker who's trying to maybe drop back, say a team's trying to play out and get the ball into a striker, he drops in, then Fabian Schär will go with him, and Botman will stay. And they've got this give and go kind of partnership where Botman covers, he's not quite as fast as Schär, who will then go follow the play in to try and win it back. And that partnership is absolutely key. Then you've got Kieran Trippier, great player, know about him, aggressive, really technically gifted, just an excellent player. And the thing is that when this back four with Nick Pope, when they play, they have only conceded 5 goals all season. One was a pinger from Ruben Neves from about here, so that happens sometimes. One was a penalty against Brentford, and 3 were against Man City, so you can kind of allow for that. That's it, that's the only goals they've let in the Premier League all season long. The only time they do concede goals is when one of these doesn't play. So for example, if maybe Sven Botman's not playing and in comes Jamal Lascelles, that's when they have problems. There's one goal they conceded against Southampton. They beat Southampton 4-1. They were 3-0 up. In the 80th minute, off goes Kieran Trippier. On comes Javi Manquillo. So he comes onto the right back position. And then in about the 88th minute, something like that, the game's already gone. What you have, Southampton have a Ward-Prowse out on the left here, and the left winger somewhere inside, and the left back overlaps. Manquillo's been caught over here somewhere, and then Elliot Anderson, we'll put Almiron in for example, who's not a right back, gets caught into this position here. There's a little bit of a working, the left back overlaps, gets in behind, he gets caught between two decisions, doesn't do the right thing, it gets into him, and the left back goes on to score. That's a 4-1 win for Newcastle, where the only goal they conceded is one, when the back four of Burn, Botman, Schär and Trippier isn't on the pitch. And yes, they conceded against like Liverpool and Sheffield Wednesday in the Cup and whatever, but it's not the same back five. That's the difference. When these 5 play, it's great. But how do they defend then? So how are they making this good? Because obviously defence is something done by a whole team, not just by individuals. Now, you might think they get really tight and low blocky and try and stop everyone getting around them. They sort of do sometimes. And they tend to win the ball in sort of the midfield area, so you might think it's a mid-block, but actually it's all things you need to do at different times. So from the start of games, they go at the opposition and press them high. So say a team's trying to build up from the back. It starts with Wilson. Now what Wilson will do is make one of 2 runs. He'll make runs like this, so either he'll go a curved run outside, or a curved run inside. Maybe that's outside, doesn't really matter. But basically, if he goes this side, the goalie's going to tend to put the ball this side. That's where he's going to go, because it's away from the striker. He's starting the press. It's a soft press, you might call it. If he goes this side, clearly the goalkeeper's going to go this way. That's what we're going to do. So he'll be in this position here to try and lead the goalkeeper one certain way. Then Almiron will push up right next to him. Joe Linton will be up here as well. He's playing instead of Alan St. Maximin. A lot more defence solidity with Joe Linton. Then you've got Willock, who'll maybe push up like a 10 to be next to the opposition 6. It's really important. You want to keep these guys surrounded to stop him being a pivot player. Then you've got Guimaraes will push up and Longstaff will push up man to man on these guys here. So again, they're locked in, so you can't get the ball to them. Then you've got Burn, Botman, Schär and Trippier will come in because they don't concede when Trippier is playing. Up they go. They'll play quite a high line from these sorts of situations. And then what you'll see is that the goalie, say he goes to, well, let's put Wilson this side and he wants to go down to this side than the left here. Now, if he goes to this guy here, Almiron's positioning is really key because he's in between a lot of different options. You can go here, you can go here, you can race back, you can go inside. He stands roughly about 5-10 yards away from where the ball might go. Then he just chases, and once he goes, everyone else goes with him, and that's how they lock it down. They try and make the pitch really small. So the idea is that there's no spare man to pass the ball to, so then eventually the opposition has to play it wide. They're trying to show the ball wide into wide areas because they want to block the middle of the pitch by having loads of bodies here. Then if the opposition does get the ball wide, and sometimes they do, good players can do that, then they start to drop back a little bit, but not too deep. This is the important bit. They keep the defensive line relatively high, maybe about there. If you drop it back further, you invite pressure from an opposition onto you. And obviously you don't want that, because then you just get stuck in the game and you can't break out. So they leave it quite late. They leave the defensive line quite high early on, but they keep the spacing between the defenders and the midfield tight. And like we said, if the team does then manage to get the ball into like a striker, Shar will follow him up to make sure there's no easy pass through. But it becomes more of a 4-5-1 at this point. But when the ball goes wide, then what happens is you'll have Almor maybe one side, Longstaff will be another, and Trippier will be here. So if the ball goes left back to winger, what happens is that they wait for this ball to come here by the touchline, Trippier engages, Longstaff engages, Almor engages, and he's stuck. If someone else joins in, the left back, it's still 3v2, and they crunch it, they squeeze the pitch here and win the ball. So they're trying to do this on purpose. The whole point is showing the ball wide to this area here where the touchline becomes an extra defender. There you go, helpful touchline. Comes across, boom, boom, boom. They win the ball back here. If they don't win the ball back and then play it forward, they just put it out for a throw-in, then they reset and they might drop a little bit deeper. Then when they get to this part of the pitch, what Newcastle always seem to do is get loads and loads and loads of bodies back really quickly to just completely deny any space in their own box. So that's how they do it. They defend high up the pitch, like this. You see here, this is Newcastle against Arsenal early in the game, taking the game to them very narrow to show the ball out wide. That's what they want to do. Then after they try and squeeze it at midway, they'll get into a really tight block. You see here, this is them. Everyone's in the box trying to block it. There's just no real way of getting the ball into goal. Everyone's throwing their bodies on the line. That's what they do. Then you'll see again, pushing high, trying to make sure the pitch is squeezed. This is the positioning I'm talking about. Joe Linton can be here, he can be here, he can be here really quickly. You get Almor on trying to watch in between the centre-back Gabriel and Zinchenko who's come inside, so we can go any different way. There's no options, no easy options for Ramsdale to get the ball to. If he throws it to this player here, straight on him, then the left back will push up and get tight to Ben White. Just no one's got any time on the ball. That's how they defend really high up the pitch to stop it being near their own goal. Then this is the part I'm talking about, squeezing it. The ball is shown wide, then they've got players surround players on the ball and squash it. This time the ball gets away, the player runs down the right, I think it's Matty Cash gets down the right here, then Sven Botman comes across, slide tackles it, puts it out of play by the touchline, because that's the extra defender, the touchline, the best friend. And if they do get in behind the last line, if they do get break the offside trap, or they just manage to get through, Newcastle have another secret weapon. Their goalkeeper, Nick Pope, as you can see, is very good. He has actually got the best save percentage of any goalkeeper in the league this season, so that's great. And it comes from not having to make too many saves. So saves per 90 is 16th. This is the thing, Newcastle aren't getting that many shots on goal and not many high quality shots on goal either. That's good. His catches, kind of mid-tables, 9th. Punches, nothing to write home about, 6th. Fine, kind of average. Everyone's around about that average there. But the real thing is keeper sweepings. He is the best at that in the entire league. He's coming off his line loads to try and meet the player first. It's preventative, it's proactive defending. That's what Newcastle are doing. They're not waiting for danger to come to them. They're going to the danger to take it on head first. That's really good. And I think with all these stats, right, so you've got a great goalkeeper, that's obviously really important, but Newcastle's stats, nothing really pops out the page. So if you look at things like, for example, duels, right, so these are how many duels, not like the gem, the shiny gem, this is when you get into a battle. Now, the average is this, 1858, Newcastle, slightly above average, 1893, you can see here if you want to have a little look at it. They're pretty average. Duel success rate, 50-50 duels. They're on 50, it's kind of average 50. The only interesting part in this actually is Liverpool are really not very good at it, they're the worst. But Newcastle average, aerial duels, average. Tackles, interceptions, any sort of metric you can look at defensively to measure Newcastle, they're pretty just in the middle, upper middle, above, slightly above average basically, except when it comes to possession won in the final third, where they are third. Only behind Man City and Leeds, who are all about getting the ball forward. So this is the thing, you're thinking Newcastle's getting all these bodies back into their own box. Actually, they're winning it loads in the final third. Then they're winning it at the halfway line in midfield, and then they're going on from there. So all the stats show Newcastle are nothing special, really, defensively. There's nothing too good. They're good at winning the ball back in the final third, whatever. But they have the best defensive record in the league. And a big reason for this, I think, is their game management, how they approach big games, big occasions. Arsenal, for example, just couldn't play the way they wanted to, weren't able to pass the ball through or get any real momentum, because as soon as they did get momentum, Newcastle found a way to derail that, whether it be getting a mysterious injury or fouling someone in a certain way or slowing things down, arguing with the referee, just starting to pass around really slowly just to try and take all the sting out of it. The ball in that game was in play for 52% of the time. That's very, very, very low. Yes. They're finding a way to manipulate games the way they want them. Liverpool as well. People who have watched that one will have seen that Newcastle just finding loads of clever ways to waste time. So they've got this clever way of managing big games to make sure they don't concede, making sure the ball's not in play at times they don't want it to be. They can't concede if the ball's not in play, especially from set pieces, because they've got all these big lads at the back to head the ball away, and they've got a real high work rate and togetherness, tactical cohesion, tactical discipline. It works very well. But the thing is it sustainable? Can this keep going? Will Newcastle end up finishing in these top 4 positions with this amazing defence? Well, expected goals against tells us, the underlying numbers, that Newcastle have an expected goals against of 17.99 versus their actual goals of 11. That's obviously quite a big difference. It's a difference of about 7 goals, essentially. So if things had gone the way you'd expect them to, then they'd be worse off. But the good news for Newcastle is that if XGA matched what their actual goals were, they would still have the 3rd best defensive record in the league. So they are there on merit for good reason. And behind the defence, you've got Nick Pope, so you've got a goalkeeper overperforming, a team largely overperforming. But the thing with the expected goals and all these underlying metrics is that they can sort of show you what should maybe be happening, but good teams and just randomly lucky teams, and it just happens now and again, can beat the model and go most of a season overperforming. Liverpool did it when they won the league in 1920. There's loads of examples of teams who can shoot above their XG or defend better than their expected goals against says. So Newcastle are actually at the top of this league, well, 3rd just now, with the best defensive record entirely on merit because they're very, very good at defending. And this was how. If you enjoyed that, subscribe to the channel, please.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.